At the heart of this story lies an unfair fight. Carla James faces public humiliation when MMA trainer Marcus singles her out to break her spirit in front of everyone. His relentless pressure and arrogance spark outrage, drawing the whole gym's attention to the conflict. But fate takes an unexpected turn, and in just 30 seconds, Carla delivers a response no one saw coming. Get ready for a gripping tale where justice prevails, and the final twist leaves no doubt. This is one fight you won't forget. Carla James entered the gym as the sun dipped lower behind Brooklyn's concrete silhouette, her figure framed against the fluorescent haze inside mixed-force MMA. She moved with the purposeful silence of someone trained by necessity, not for show. The air was thick with the sharp scent of rubber mats and the anticipation of another grueling session. Noise swirled gloves slapping, trainers shouting corrections, but it receded into background static for Carla, whose mind sharpened to the rhythms of the gym. Marcus Dillon prowled between groups, his focus drifting from pair to pair, until it landed, unyielding, on Carla. His reputation echoed in the walls, the man who demanded results above all. His teaching style, celebrated by some for its rigor, unsettled others for the thin line it walked between discipline and humiliation. Marcus favored tests not on technique alone, but on character itself. He wanted fighters who flinched from nothing. His commands rang loud and absolute, a thin veneer of camaraderie masking a deeper desire for control. Carla wrapped her hands tightly, each motion practiced, her fingers trembling only from anticipation, not fear. Her past endeavors had built a resilience Marcus could not see at first glance. She understood the weight of expectations from years spent in military ranks, always judged, always tested. But in the gym tonight, those old defenses felt strangely fragile as Marcus zeroed in on her with sharpened attention. Warm-ups began with the typical drills. Marcus watched her form, correcting the angle of her elbows, the twist of her hips, the very breath that carried each punch. Tighter, faster, again. His critiques were louder for her than anyone else, and murmurs rippled outwards as other trainees noticed. She received no room for error, no pauses for encouragement, only the pressure of someone silently urging her to break. The rest of the class passed glances, some worried, some resigned, as Carla became the focal point of Marcus's test. The session stretched. Marcus moved from technical corrections to public assessments, questioning every move Carla made with unwavering scrutiny. He assigned her extra rounds push-ups until her arms burned, solo shadowboxing long after others had finished. "This builds champions, not pretenders," he announced, never mentioning Carla by name but making the message clear. Other women in the gym stiffened. Some nearly spoke up, but the weight of Marcus's authority kept their protests beneath the surface. Cleaning duties came next, disguised as a lesson in humility, but felt more like a punishment. Carla stayed long after the mats emptied, scrubbing sweat and chalk, listening to the echo of Marcus's lessons in the empty room. He watched the task from a distance before approaching her, his posture careful, domineering. "If you want to belong here, you earn it the hard way," he said. Not unkindly, but not kindly either. Carla's memories fluttered back to moments of military service, the exhausting nights under fire, decisions that balanced between mercy and necessity, teammates who trusted her when leadership didn't. Those memories sharpened her resolve. Here, in this gym, the nature of the test was different, but the cost of failure would be just as personal, a wound to her dignity, a challenge to her right to stand strong. Evening shadows grew as the lights flickered above her. The last thing Marcus said was, "Don't let respect slip away. You only get one chance." Carla absorbed this, not as a threat, but as another test. Her gaze lifted to meet his, steady and without flinching. Marcus wanted conformity, but what he received was unwavering poise. As the doors finally closed behind her, Carla felt the weight of every silent witness, every trainee who had averted their eyes, every fleeting moment when someone considered speaking but held back. She stepped into the night air, breath slow, shoulders squared, her walk reflecting not defeat, but a quiet, determined strength. The city moved on, oblivious to the battles inside the gym, but for Carla, and those who watched, the true contest had only just begun. Carla returned home that night with the weight of unresolved frustration curving her shoulders, every step a reminder that the gym was not simply a place for improvement, but, lately, also a crucible where her sense of self was put under siege. In the privacy of her narrow apartment, she allowed herself the small luxury of reflection, replaying the day's events in her mind with growing intensity. She recognized a familiar ache, a yearning not just to persevere, but to understand. Why was she met with resistance at every turn? Through the night, Carla's thoughts wandered back to her former life in the military, where every ounce of effort was measured and every outcome had lasting consequences. She remembered camaraderie, as well as isolation when she was doubted for reasons she could not change. The memory of carrying a wounded companion through chaos was etched into her bones, proof of her strength, even when it went unrecognized. Yet in the world outside, acceptance was conditional, often shaped by prejudices and expectations that no amount of discipline could erase. The next morning, Carla's resolve teetered between determination and exhaustion. The city's energy pulsed outside, indifferent to individual struggle. She dressed with methodical care, tightening her wraps, checking her posture in the mirror. There was no visible tremor in her face when she arrived at the gym, but the uncertainty underneath persisted, challenging her every move. Mixed Force MMA buzzed with anticipation as word spread about yesterday's events. Some trainees greeted her with hesitant nods, others avoided her gaze, none willing to engage directly against the unspoken authority Marcus wielded. The air felt different, charged with the silent tension of a test nobody wanted to intervene in. A group of newcomers clustered near the entrance, trading nervous glances as they watched Carla prepare for what would come. Marcus greeted the class with his trademark intensity, every syllable laced with command. Today's lesson was announced as an unexpected, open challenge, a sparsely veiled test of spirit, as much as technique. He paired Carla not with another trainee, but with himself, a decision met with a mixture of surprise, anxiety, and silent protest among the group. For Carla, this public gauntlet was not just an exercise, but an unmistakable escalation in his quest to assert dominance. She stood facing Marcus on the mat, her posture unshaken but her internal world roiling. Marcus moved with confidence, tracking her smallest gestures. The round began not with the measured pacing of training, but with a burst of energy. Marcus pressed her hard immediately, maneuvering with skill and authority, setting traps designed to exploit any hesitation. Carla bent, pivoted, absorbed each test with controlled resistance, never giving in, even as physical fatigue pressed harder. Each exchange grew heavier, Marcus punctuating the sparring with sharp commentary meant just for her. "Show me something real," he said after an especially difficult sequence, pushing her to the edge of her endurance. The words echoed, mingling with memories of the past, the hundreds of directives she'd received in the military, many well-intentioned, some unfair, all shaping the person she had become. Here, his commands blended with those recollections, fueling not only her muscles, but the quiet storm gathering in her mind. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the gym crowd holding its collective breath. Some fighters bowed out, unable to watch what had become less a demonstration and more a showdown. Others lingered along the walls, whispering anxiously, hoping for an intervention, yet unwilling to become part of Marcus's field of scrutiny. Carla felt the familiar ache return as sweat traced lines across her back. She heard echoes of every trial she'd ever faced, professional, personal, emotional, all converging in the space between her and Marcus. Each push from him became a physical reminder of old wounds, yet also, paradoxically, a catalyst for her resistance. She remembered the words of a friend from her military days. Courage isn't measured by the size of your challenge, but by the choices you make when nobody else will. As the sparring drew closer to its conclusion, Carla's determination crystallized. Her breathing became steady, her movements sharper. Marcus tried to unsettle her with a series of fast attacks, but found her endurance unbreakable. The struggle was no longer just about physical superiority. It now embodied the scars, the pride, and the lessons of a journey carved through adversity. When at last the round ended, Marcus withdrew, for a moment betrayed by the exhaustion on his own face. Carla stood still, her head held higher than at the session's start. Marcus regarded her with a complex expression that gave no clear answer, a mixture of grudging respect and the difficult awareness that his power was not as absolute as he wanted it to be. The gym exploded in uncertain energy. Some applauded, others exchanged looks heavy with emotion. For Carla, the challenge meant far more than the physical test. It had become a moment of painful clarity. Every trial, every harsh word, every uneasy silence in that gym had built to this point. She walked away slowly, marked not by defeat or triumph, but by a pain that refused to turn to bitterness, and by a hope, however fragile, that the next challenge might be met with something more than resistance. Carla woke before the sunrise, her thoughts spinning with anticipation and focus. The soreness in her body no longer felt like a limitation. It reminded her of determination forged in past hardships. Passing through early Brooklyn streets, she prepared mentally for the showdown at Mixed Force MMA, replaying tactical moves and reminding herself of lessons learned, discipline, adaptation, and perseverance under pressure. This morning the gym felt fundamentally different. Whispers followed Carla as she entered. Trainees were quietly aware that today would bring a final resolution to the tension that had been growing, a test not just of skill, but of character. Marcus, whose authority had once seemed unshakable, sensed the change too. He gathered the class, announcing a 30-second open spar between himself and Carla as a demonstration. Anticipation surged. Everyone understood it was more than routine. The challenge began. Carla faced Marcus, drawing confidence from the memory of her military training. She set her stance, her mind laser-focused on technique and timing. The bell rang. Marcus moved first fast, forceful, with the clear intent to overwhelm. But Carla kept her composure. She matched speed with strategy, using her knowledge to deflect and counter, letting instinct guide her responses. Her movements displayed skill, honed through years of adversity. Precise footwork, controlled breath, and the ability to read an opponent's intent. Seconds ticked by, the crowd growing quieter with each exchange. Marcus threw combinations, each intended to push Carla to her limit. She countered with well-practiced defense and quick, calculated attacks. The session had become a dance, Colt Marcus's force against Carla's quiet resilience. Near the halfway mark, Carla's confidence grew. She remembered advice drilled into her from military days: never lose focus, always anticipate, react from experience, not adrenaline. At 20 seconds, she saw Marcus falter just slightly. Recognizing a rare opening, she committed. Her left hand swept forward in a smooth, practiced hook, finding its mark. The sound was subdued, but its impact reverberated across the gym. Marcus staggered, momentarily stunned. The crowd gasped, a wave of realization washing over even those most skeptical. Carla did not rush. She stayed composed, ready for the next move, but Marcus knew he could not recover. As the timer chimed the end, the match's outcome was undeniable. Applause erupted. The tension that had filled the gym transformed into admiration as Carla left the ring. She had proved that grace and preparation could triumph even under intense pressure. For the first time, many trainees found themselves inspired, not just by the technique, but by the conviction behind every move. The result resonated. Adversity could be overcome, dignity reclaimed. Marcus offered a nod, nothing more, yet heavier and more honest than any words would have been. Carla returned it quietly, her victory not a boast, but an affirmation of her journey. As she walked away, a sense of pride settled within her, reflected in the newfound respect of everyone around. What began as a test of physical skill became proof of her inner strength, determination, and unbreakable resolve. Carla remained at the center of the ring, surrounded by a rare and meaningful silence. The energy in Mixed Force MMA had shifted. Instead of the usual tension or bravado, there was a profound sense of respect, an unspoken understanding passing between every observer. With the match concluded and Marcus no longer an unassailable figure, the room held its breath, absorbing the lessons that had just unfolded. As trainees began to move, their gestures were cautious but genuine. Carla was approached first by those who had quietly supported her during the week, people who had seen her struggle, felt her pain, and, in their own ways, recognized pieces of themselves in her perseverance. They congratulated her, not with loud proclamations, but soft nods and careful words. "You showed us what fighting really means," said one. Others admitted how her focus and patience had given them courage, that sometimes the true measure of a fighter isn't in physical dominance, but in determination and restraint. Marcus watched remotely, his position displaced. He lingered near the edge of the locker room, uneasy for the first time. For years he had cultivated an image of strength built on control and challenge, always presenting authority as necessary discipline. Now he saw something different in Carla, not merely resistance, but a resolve that inspired transformation rather than division. Eventually he approached her, his tone less assertive and more reflective. "You earned your place here. Everyone can see that," he said, voice stripped of pretense, his respect clear. The admission was quiet, but it meant more to Carla than any apology could. The atmosphere became lighter as the day shifted toward evening. In small circles, trainees debated techniques, replayed moments, and admitted private anxieties previously left unspoken, moments of failure, doubt, or the fear of not being enough. Carla was welcomed into these groups not as an outsider, but as someone whose story offered hope, encouragement, and a reminder that adversity does not define a person, but can reshape their destiny. The transformation of the gym itself was remarkable. Where routines had once been rigid and roles clearly drawn, a sense of shared possibility now infused every practice. Marcus changed his approach with all fighters, tempering critique with guidance, dialogue, and a new openness to vulnerability. His pride remained, but it now carried humility, a willingness to let others lead, to challenge his own assumptions, and to model not only authority, but adaptability. Carla watched this change unfold and felt a deep sense of satisfaction, greater than the brief victory in the ring. She realized her journey, with all its setbacks and battles, had catalyzed growth far beyond her own achievement. Every new challenge faced by the gym's members took on fresh meaning. Her resilience had become a reference point for others facing their own quiet battles. She was invited to help coach the newer trainees, her perspective valued as much for its empathy as for its technical skill. Walking home after sunset, Carla felt transformed by more than the events of the day. She felt uplifted by the emergence of community, a recognition that sometimes victory is collective, born in the spaces between competition and support. Her steps were light, her eyes finding beauty in the city's small details, a musician practicing in a window, children playing beneath streetlights, ordinary scenes that suddenly held layers of possibility. That evening, Carla sat by her window, reflecting on everything the week had held. She pictured the moments of vulnerability, the weight of Marcus's challenges, the sensation of failing and regrouping, the pride of standing tall in the face of public testing. Yet, what lingered most was the sense of catharsis, a release of grief and anger that had threatened to shape her life, now reshaped into hope and self-belief. Across town, Marcus closed up the gym, his mind restless but changed. He replayed every moment, each word spoken, every moment when authority had eclipsed compassion. In the quiet of his office he made notes for new routines, for shared leadership, for ways to foster not just stronger fighters, but better people. Carla's resilience had taught him something essential about openness, growth, and the capacity to redefine what it means to be strong. Mixed force, MMA, once a place of intimidation and hierarchy, grew into a site of transformation, a story whispered about well beyond Brooklyn in forums and online groups, an example of what happens when dignity and courage reshape not just one life, but many. Trainees old and new arrived carrying their own hopes and fears, bolstered by the knowledge that breakthroughs were possible, that challenge could birth solidarity, and that every ring, no matter how contested, could become a space where futures were rewritten. For Carla, this chapter marked the beginning of a new era, a time not defined by the pain inflicted, but by the meaning reclaimed, a time where every obstacle was not just endured, but remade into a foundation for triumph, for inspiration, and for the quiet knowledge that nothing important could ever be lost to adversity, so long as the spirit remained unbroken.